Welcome to the Sister Street Show with Mary Nunley and Sharon Otaguero, interactive show and virtual playground where we explore topics around entrepreneurship, online and in-person events, and the games that can be played with all of it. We invite you on our journey of sisterhood discovery and trial and error in the adventures of online entrepreneurship.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Sister Street Show. It is your co-host, Sharon Otaguero, with my lovely co-host,
Mary Nunley. Nice to see you back here.
And we today are here to talk to you about the accidental entrepreneur. As we said, this whole year is about the year of the entrepreneur for us, hopefully for you, and to inspire others on that corporate off-road. So we're going to talk about the customer journey. Mary, why don't you tell us a little bit about why we chose the customer journey as the important topic to kick off this show?
Sharon, thanks for asking me. Great question. And for those of you who don't get to look behind the scenes, Sharon and I have these planning meetings where we just bounce ideas off of each other and talk about like the topics and get real clarity. And the reason I bring that up is that whether you're an accidental entrepreneur working in corporate or whatever, having a sounding board, having somebody where you can bounce ideas off of is really valuable. So you may be asking yourself, well, how does this relate to the customer journey? Well, it's the same thing, because as an entrepreneur, as any business, you need to know that path that your customer is going to take from the first time they interact with you to the time that they become a raving fan and stay with you and like and love your products. And what I have experienced in my entrepreneurial journey is that up until the last few months, I have not been really clear on what that customer journey is and what the product is that I'm really offering. And so Sharon and I thought, well, if we struggle with this, other people probably struggle with this as well. And so I know I've kind of gone a little bit off script there, Sharon, but the customer journey is knowing who you're selling your product or service to and how they're going to get to that point where they're actually buying something from you. And the reason I'm putting an emphasis on buying is that so many times as entrepreneurs, especially accidental entrepreneurs, we get sucked into the trap of doing things for our business, but we really don't have a business, because until someone buys something from you, you don't have a business. So you might be spending all this time making cool graphics for your customer journey, but if nobody buys anything, you've just spent time making a bunch of cool graphics. So Sharon, why don't you hop in and add a little bit of clarity to what I've been rambling about?
No, it's no rambling. It's exactly where I think I find a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in the information space. And so that is the focus for some of what we're going to discuss today for entrepreneurs. But it is interesting because as we come into this space, and there's a lot of coaches and speakers and authors now, and so specifically to coaches, course creators, and online information entrepreneurs, there's this sense that you need to find your avatar. We've talked about it as well. Know exactly who you're selling to, and that's great. But what we really want to focus in on in this episode is that it's important to know where you're starting for your customer, but on the customer journey, it's more important than that to figure out what you're selling. And it's not just enough that you're selling yourself, because quite frankly, people don't care about you. They care about what you can do for them. And then they will care about you as what you did for them continues to impact their lives. But Mary, let's go back one step, because we started with that term. We've used it a couple times in our series now, and we haven't quite defined it, that accidental entrepreneur. So what does accidental entrepreneur mean for you?
Great question. So for me, the accidental entrepreneur is somebody who has stumbled into perhaps a money-making side hustle. And I'm really not a fan of the term side hustle, but stumbled into something alongside their full-time gig, whatever that could be. And when it could be that your full-time gig is a stay-at-home parent. It could be that your full-time gig is a corporate employee, but that accidental entrepreneur found something, a hobby, a craft, a book that they wrote, a passion project, and realized like, oh, I could actually make some money doing this. And oh, if I put some time and energy into this, I could actually make a significant amount of money. And then it comes into like, oh, this is more fun and I'm making more money than I am in whatever I was doing before. I think I'm going to leave what I was doing before and make this my business. So to me, it's not somebody that was on the path of, I'm going to business school, I'm going to study entrepreneurship, I have this idea for a startup, I'm going to go after venture capital funding. Those are entrepreneurs who have a clearly defined path versus many of us who became accidental entrepreneurs going, oh yeah, I need a little extra money to pay for vacation, or my kids are playing travel sports and I need to cover the costs, or how do I make some money because in my full-time job I can't generate any extra income.
Exactly. Yes. That is a really great definition, Mary, of accidental entrepreneur. And I also want to add the nuance to that, this could also be a brick and mortar business owner who was in a family business or who chose a business because, that is what the shopping center needed. That's actually how my family got into restaurants. They went to the shopping center and said, okay, well, what do you need to fill? We want to be at this shopping center. And we were told what to do. So little Japanese family started doing Mexican quesadillas because that was the restaurant that they needed in the kiosk in the food court. So if you're an entrepreneur, a lot of times that accidental piece is because you're there because you're filling a need, but you're not quite certain about what it is to do business in that business. And you found maybe one success, you found a product that someone wanted to buy, but you're not sure what else is out there. So there's the sense that you sort of fell into something, or you found yourself in a business where you're now a little bit lost. You're not quite certain what to do next. And Mary and I can't take full credit for this term. This term was shared with me in the Scalable Business Advisory Group, of which I am a licensed scalable business advisor. But it is from the world of digital marketing and mergers and acquisitions, from some great names. So we thought it was a great term. We want to continue expanding that term because I think it fits for a lot of the people that we know. Wouldn't you say, Mary?
I would say so. And on those same lines, there's a book that I read many, many years ago that I share with my teams all the time called The Accidental Instructional Designer. So it's that same type of thing. The career that I'm in happened by accident. I was a restaurant manager. And then it's like, oh, you're good at training people. Oh, you're good at creating training programs. And the next thing I know, it's like, oh, this has a title. The other thing I wanted to mention very briefly is that when we're talking about the accidental entrepreneur, and I may be touching on some, pain points for some folks, is that there are also a lot of accidental entrepreneurs that are in the multi-level marketing or direct sales space. And those people oftentimes get a lot of flack for being in that space. I'm not here to talk about pyramid schemes or how nobody makes money in that. But what I want to say is that for myself, I've been involved in several of those companies, mostly as a sort of like on the side because I just wanted the discount. But what I learned from those companies has really helped me in my accidental entrepreneurial journey because I was exposed to business books and to training and to learning things about how to follow up with customers, how to not be a spammy, salesy weirdo, how to do a lot of these things that I now do with my own company. And so, as in any industry, there are going to be good things and bad things. But if those of you that are listening are in that space, please take what we're saying to heart because it may help you as well on your journey.
Yes, I heard this just last year, but it was about direct marketing and network marketing. There's a lot of terms for the direct sales industry, and we have a couple of colleagues who are very well skilled to guide you if you're stuck in that process. But what they told me was it is the lowest barrier to entry. So it's the smallest investment that you can make to own your own business that has so many resources at your disposal, from training materials to personal development, to community, and really for people who are struggling, and going back to last week's episode, struggling with a little bit of that identity, it's a great place to start because it gives you a sense of identity through the community, through the product and the product's mission. And it gives you some of the training wheels on business that a lot of people lack, and a lot of companies, quite frankly, lack as well.
Yeah. So I just want, those of you that are listening, love them or hate them, there are some real, in my opinion, benefits to the type of training and community that is there. It's a whole different conversation about payment and all that type of thing. So we're not going down that road.
Absolutely. All right. So we sort of defined accidental entrepreneur, and we touched on that customer journey. And we want to bring that back to front of mind for you, because the customer journey is about what you are selling, and then how you take that customer from enticing them with your marketing through the closing of and sales is always such a scary thing. We might bring some guests in later to talk about why sales is not scary. But sales is really the close of the delivery, so that you're keeping that promise and saying, yes, I can deliver for you. And then the customer journey takes them through the full delivery of what you offer, not just here you go, thanks for your money, goodbye, because that will lose so many more repeat customers, which is a really big part of the game. So customer journey. Tell us, Mary, from your perspective. So why is it important to know exactly what you're selling to the customer?
Oh, great question. So I always go back to food in my storytelling because, first of all, we all have to eat. And second of all, I spent a good chunk of my career in the food industry, and food and beverage is my life. And so let me start with a food story. Let's say that you are going to the grocery store and you are going to pick up food for dinner. Well, you end up at the hardware store instead. But the hardware store has a sign outside that says, donut holes, 50 cents. Well, great. That's food, right? At least to me it is. Well, when you get to the hardware store, you find out that it's a special kind of tool. So the hardware store knew exactly what they were selling, but they were selling it to the wrong customer because you were hungry and you were looking for a snack. And so there was a disconnect. Same thing with the customer journey. If you and the customer both don't know what you're selling and what the end result is going to be, there's going to be a lot of miscommunication. There's going to be a lot of upset folks. And so being very clear on what that product is and where you're going to buy it from. So for example, in our business, we create for course creators and companies online interactive courses and animated videos. Well, if you want a Hollywood style production, we are not the company to come to. If you want fillable PDFs, we can probably help you out, but that's really not a course. And so we have to be very clear when we're talking to prospective customers. Here's the product that we offer. Here's what it will do for you. And here's how much it's going to cost. And so up front, everyone is on that same page. What about for you, Sharon? Because I know you work more in the coaching space and in the wellness space. So what type of product is it that you offer? And what's your customer journey like?
I want donut holes first, Mary.
You can tell I haven't had breakfast yet. It's like, ooh, donut holes. Yes.
I'm kidding. And of course, donut holes down into wellness. Well, it does connect somehow. But thank you for asking. Wellness is a really big, broad term that's really on trend right now. And it is difficult for people to understand. So the more specific, the more specialty of the niche you work within, the better you're going to be able to communicate. And Mary and I have a lot of overlap in what we do. At the same time, there's not a lot of people in one of our communities that know wellness like the back of their hands. So it's really important when I say what I do to be specific as well. Okay, so what do? I am a business coach for the wellness industry. What does that mean? I work primarily with spas, but also fitness centers and other practitioners like acupuncturists and nutritionists, etc., to implement their operating systems. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, their operating systems, there's a lot of different types of pieces of that that coaches can work on. For myself, it is working on their clarity for their roles, their meeting cadence, and also their playbook or their SOPs, their standard operating procedures. So we make sure that the team knows who they report to and what they do, how they do it, and specifically to exactly where the pain points for the operations are, and then how they communicate it. And then ultimately with the goal that they are in their optimal, their optimal operating so that they can sell their business in the future. So you can see how it can get more and more specific, whereas someone else who might say business coaching might be, well, I work with the leader to, work on team engagement or work on gender equity or color equity. And so you have to get deeper and deeper when you have the conversations, just as Mary mentioned, and you need to start somewhere. So knowing exactly the overall industry and then overall product and then specifically the process is going to help you. And it's important to know it at the beginning, because if someone is interested in you, they're going to start asking questions. And if you don't have those answers, your pauses will come across as insecurities for your customer.
Oh, great description. And so I wanted to ask a follow-up on that as well. You talked about knowing the industry and knowing your product. When you're first starting out, how deep do you have to go in terms of defining who you serve? Because I know for myself, and we've had some of these conversations as well, oftentimes when we start going into a coaching program, we're told to do this deep dive and like create these customer personas or avatars and deep dive into as deep as like what color, linens do they like in their bedroom and things like that, or like who's your avatar. And it's like, for me, the bigger picture, like I don't need to know the psychographics and demographics for my clients, especially corporate clients. What I need to know is that they have a need for somebody with this skill set, and it's a short-term temporary fix. And where do I find those types of projects instead of, oh yes, the person that most likely hires me is a 45-year-old human resources person that has, 2.5 children, 6 dogs. That doesn't matter. It's they work for a company that's this size, they have a training team that's this size, and they need somebody that can do these skills. So how do you balance that?
Yes, that's so, so important, Mary. Before we do that time out, I know that some of you might have had a type of moment. If you have been following the show, yes, I do have two different businesses. And so I wanted to call that out because you might have heard in earlier episodes that I work on summits and events, and that is true. Um, the important point here is that if you have more than one service that you offer or more than one business, it is important that when you start a conversation with someone that you stay completely in that lane, because it will otherwise give confusion. My main business is the business coaching for wellness industry. And I also have a business that helps online entrepreneurs run their summits. They are intertwined, but many times people will not see that connection, and that's totally okay. So when you're having a conversation, stick in the one business that you're talking about, and you can have more than one. Just keep it conversation by conversation. So sorry, Mary, I had
No,
to
no, great point,
jump in
because
there.
it's the same with us. While we are course creators, we also help smaller businesses build their interactive lead magnet. So you may have heard me mention that as well, depending on who you are and who I'm talking to. But my primary business is online course creation, learning experience design. So great call out. And for our listeners, our audience, it's okay to have multiple side businesses as long as you keep track of them. Don't lose your mind, because sometimes you're like, where am I? What am I doing? And speaking as a former corporate manager of a team, the one thing I do want to remind our audience is if you are working a full-time corporate gig and you have an accidental entrepreneurial project or side hustle, be very, very mindful of when you are on the company time and when you are on the own time. Because in the course of my career, I have had to fire people because those lines got blurred, and they got blurred too much. And, my management, my leadership is like, they can't be doing that on company time. Lunch breaks, things like that. That's one thing. So just be mindful of what the policies are where you work.
Yeah, exactly that. And a great visual, whether metaphorically or in real life, would be to have different hats. So there's different exercises in terms of clarity, in terms of perspective. This is one of them where you could have a red cap, and the red cap is your passion cap, or the red cap is one cap for a specific business. So think about that anytime you're doing your work, to know exactly what voice you're speaking in, who you're speaking to, and what business and product you're offering. And it's interesting because that then ties into the audience, and making sure that exactly who you're speaking to. And to Mary's point, some of you may consider that you need to have the demographic psychographics, and we're not saying that that's not right. What we are saying, however, is that understanding what your product is more important than knowing that your avatar, that your audience member, that your client likes to go eat rye bread from Greek restaurants, right? So it's good to be really specific. And I personally like having a person in mind when I'm doing my marketing and doing all my writing, because then I can speak to that person in a personal way. And a lot of my coaching clients need to start at a much broader space. And the example we like to use, Mary and I, is if you're going to open up a food restaurant, you don't care if in that restaurant there is a 20-something-year-old vegan and a 70-something-year-old, brick and mortar business owner. You just care that they all like Italian food,
Hmm.
right? So there's the sense of understanding what your core product is, and then being able to see who comes into your restaurant, who comes into your store, and see if there are patterns is more important. So depending where you are on your journey, that avatar is going to be, the specificity of it is going to be more and more important. But it
Yes.
may be because you are in a location and you need to say, okay, who lives in this zip code? Or it may mean that you want to look at the psychographics, meaning the emotional labels that people put on themselves, or not.
Right. And Sharon, to that point, when you're first starting out, it's like you said, it's more important to know my audience is people who like to eat Italian food or whatever. As you learn whether or not your product is actually what you think it's going to do, and you find success and you start getting sales and you start building revenue, and then you start marketing and advertising more, that's when. So I'm not saying like don't do the psychographic demographic avatars, but what I'm saying is when you're first starting out, your goal is to make sales and get revenue and create a sustainable business. As you do that, you begin to get a better understanding of who that audience is and who you best serve, versus putting a lot of time and energy into figuring out who that audience is only to find out that you completely missed the mark. And again, going back to my very early comment, this is why I like having our planning sessions with Sharon, because it helps me to clarify, like, okay, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I want to talk about. And she's like, question, question, question. I'm like, oh, and then I'll do the same thing to her. Question, question, question. So question everything,
Mhm.
and be flexible enough to let yourself go.
Yeah. And for those of you who are a little bit further down the entrepreneurial journey and you feel like, I know what my product is, hopefully you also are rechecking that product, that core product, every 6 months, every quarter, and seeing, is this the core product, or what else in this core product world is possible? So making sure that you understand that core product, and if that core product is best serving the needs of your customers. So product is always important in your journey, not just for beginning entrepreneurs as well.
Right. And that is the core of your business. Without a product, you don't have a business.
Exactly.
And so next time,
Well, Mary, one last piece on that. So what
yes.
about a product for an information person? So we started off with coaches. Do coaches have a product?
Yeah, I think they do. I mean, the coaching itself could be the product. The coaches could have a book that they wrote, which is a product. The coaches might have a course or a podcast, which is a product. But if you're only offering as a coach is your coaching service, then you still have to look at that as a product. Think about when you go to, again, sticking with restaurants, when you go to a restaurant, generally, especially at a higher scale restaurant, there are going to be detailed descriptions of what you're getting served. So if I go to a fast food restaurant, it might just say hot dog. If I go to a mid-ranged restaurant, it might say 100% kosher all beef hot dog served with. If I go to an upscale restaurant, it's going to say freshest sausage made from, farm to table, local farms using blah, blah, blah. It's still a hot dog, but one restaurant charges $2.50. One restaurant charges $5 and one restaurant charges $20. And they could all be using the same kosher hot dog, but it's in the description. And so as a coach, you need to be very clear on how you describe the product you're coaching and what people can expect. So working with me, you will have 5 sessions. Each session will be 30 minutes. In each 30-minute session, here's what we're going to do, blah, 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 so that your audience knows exactly what to expect.
Excellent. And so you might want to think, everyone, that your product could be hour based. So either if it's a coaching session per hour, what is your rate? And that's your product. Or you could think end result based. So I will have you come over your limiting beliefs, and that end result is the package, which then you've got to calculate how many hours, therefore how much worth in that product. And as Mary said, there's product in everything. What you want to consider is, what is the value transfer? What are you getting paid for? What are you delivering? What is that promise that you are delivering? So, yeah.
Oh, sorry. I think the last piece of that is not only what is the product, but it's also where is your audience at? And again, going back to the restaurant example, if I'm in the car coming home from work and I know that I've got to be at another meeting and I've got, screaming hungry people in the vehicle with me, I may just go to that fast food restaurant because I just need calories. And so think about, when it does come to your audience, think about that. Do they just need calories, or are they really looking to do that deeper work? And who do you like to work with as a coach? Do you want to work with somebody just starting out because that's what gives you joy? Or do you want to work at the executive level where you might have fewer clients and they pay more, but there's also a lot more that you have to peel back?
Yes. And I'm trying to find the reference of exactly where I heard this, but what I was reading recently was, what is the most important aspect of your product and your sales and your business? So Mary, what do you think is the most important thing that you need to be a successful business?
I think you need to have a clearly defined product and a way to reach your audience with it.
And that is the episode that we talked about. Yes. And it is having a starving audience. So, I heard this from Alex Hormozy, who talks about the $100 million offer. But the quality of your product is important, meaning, exactly as Mary said, you need a product. An audience is important, because if someone's not going to be there to consume your product, then you don't really have a product. And what's going to make it the most successful is not as much the quality of product, which is there for you, for those of you that have imposter syndrome and think, well, my coaching may not be as good as the XYZ, blah, blah, blah. That's not as important as finding the right audience, knowing that when that stadium empties because the game is over, that you are there with the perfect vegan hot dog, because guess what? They might be meat eaters, but if you're the only hot dog vendor in town, you will get every single sale out there. So that's for all of you that are feeling a little bit of that insecurity of, I don't know if my product is worth it. That's why you need to know what your product is. That's why you need to go out and try to tell 10 people to buy it. And if you get 10 people, you have a product, you have a business.
I love it. Which, Sharon, perfect segue into next week's topic, which is all about, you got to have a product and you got to make some sales. And so for those of you that are listening that are thinking like, maybe I do want to step into this entrepreneurial space. Maybe I want to check it out. Hopefully today's episode and last week's episode have given you some things to think about in terms of the preparation. So it's just like in that sports analogy, you don't just get on the field and go to the Super Bowl. You have years of practice, and people don't see that, whether you're a rock star, a concert pianist, an athlete at the professional most elite levels. What people don't see is all those years of practice and planning and reshuffling and whatever that oftentimes start when you're 5 or 6 years old. And so, it's like, oh, well, he's 25 years old. How's he doing that? Well, he started playing football when he was 5. So he's actually got 20 years of experience. If you're starting out as an entrepreneur and you've never done this before, don't beat yourself up because you don't get it right the first time, because you haven't had that experience. And if you talk to many of the most successful entrepreneurs, they will tell you that they've failed more often than they have succeeded. But what they've done is they've learned from that, and then they've applied that to their next venture. So don't give up.
Yeah, that first airplane did not come off the ground, but with that dedication and vision, that airplane now transforms so many lives across the globe, right?
I love it.
Yeah.
So Sharon, what are your final words of wisdom for today's episode? We've gone a little long today, but I think it's been well worth it. It's a topic that we're both very passionate about. So give us some parting words of wisdom and let us know what we're going to talk about next time.
Absolutely. So make sure that you are focused on exactly what that product is. Otherwise, you are just in busyness. You're just doing busy work and trying to dabble with marketing, dabble with sales, dabble with your business, because you don't actually know what you sell. So make sure you know exactly what you're selling, and don't worry whether it's the best thing that you can offer, because that will come with time. Once you know exactly what you're selling, get out there and sell it. Friends, family, strangers, if 10 people are interested, then you are on your way. And we'll go into more detail next week. And we have some goodies for all of you. So make sure that you check down in the show notes, download those goodies, and subscribe to our channel. Mary, anything final from you?
Last thing is, when you go to download those goodies, you can find us on YouTube as the Sister Street Show, or you can go to sisterstreet.show, SHOW.
Till next time.
Thank you. Now. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for future videos.